one fall night at a fairground near town when Esther first saw the Armenian man who groveled towards her and stood by her side with a bucket that swung in his hand. His grin stretched the folds of his pasty white cheeks, and his lips hurled a dollop of murk on the curb, and the lights from the ride showed a mischievous sparkle that flashed in his hollow-eyed stare. He said, "Little girl, you can chop off my legs and peel off my socks if you want to, but I'd rather you took this old puppet from me that I hold in my pail as we speak." He stood looking down at the innocent girl, and she stared at the bucket bewildered. Then he lifted the doll for the young girl to see, and a giant smile grew on his face. She saw the doll's eyes and she couldn't resist, and she thanked the man quickly and ran to the church. She burst through the doorway with puppet held high. Hush filled the chapel and the people looked mean. Esther tried in vain to pacify the mob, but quibble grew to spat, to wrangle, then to brawl. The frenzied congregation struggling desperately to fetch the pretty puppet snugly nestled deep in Esther's leather sack. Through the window of the church a storm began to rage, and Esther knew the time had come to flee. As she hurried down the aisle towards a doorway in the distance and out into the rainstorm where she felt she would be free, but the wind was blowing harder now and her skirt began to billow, until finally her feet began to lift, and she rose above the people and the houses and the chimneys, and Esther and the doll were set adrift, floating higher over the fields and the valleys and treetops. They flutter and glide, turning and soaring, suspended on air. With the earth far below them, they tumble and dive through the clouds. Darkest hour of night, nervously she fumbled for the pouch that held the puppet to her rump. Feeling quite outnumbered, Esther hid behind a nearby nearby pile of lumber, where she waited till the dawn. For it would have been a blunder to succumb to any hoodlum on the prowl. When the morning came, she wandered through the streets along the chilly lake that lay beside the town. At last, a peaceful moment, then she thought she heard a sound. It was an angry mob of joggers rushing up to knock her down. As Esther stood and shook her head, joggers were approaching, and she knew she had no choice left but to swim. As frosty water sank its bitter teeth into her hide, she tried to slide the heavy clothing from her skin. Naked now, she made her way towards the shore, when suddenly she felt a tiny tugging at her toe. And the puppet she'd forgotten had wrapped its tiny little arms around her ankle, and it wouldn't let her go. The waves seemed to open and swallow her whole as the doll dragged her down through the eerie green deep. And the sound of the laughing old man filled her ears as she drifted away to a tranquil and motionless sleep.